If there's anything that's going to change the image of this port property from the big asphalt parking lots and all, nature is such an extraordinary positive for you. It changes everyone's view of real estate. I mean, now we really have real estate. And we have a most sustainable way of handling stormwater. We don't need any pipes in any streets. We're doing this in all our new communities. We're collecting water in the streets, slowing them down, bringing them to the parks, in the stream, collect, and then they seep it through the groundwater. So we accomplish a great public amenity, sustainable way of handling water, new real estate, using a Cleveland tradition, and we've woven this into the whole park plan, one continuous place throughout all, mostly off the waterfront, because we have deep land that's not on the water, so now we have property that's on a park if it isn't on the water. And we're ending at the stadium, and now we can reposition the stadium so it in fact is part of a park system. And I might add, we greatly enhance the stadium's not only aesthetic, but also its potential to add much more development to its own facilities. The way of doing that is you put the local streets, small streets with development on both sides, and you have this in various parts of your parkway system, and it's what Olmsted did throughout Boston. This is one of our first sketches of what that might be like. You're looking, in this case, east towards the stadium. The building-to-building line is probably anywhere from 100 to 120, 130. San Antonio does it in less. Many of your parkways have done it in less. So we think this is quite doable. It'll be done incrementally over time. But the key thing is to bring nature into a repositioning of this wonderful harbor front. And when we combine all the streets, parks, and promenades, you begin to get a picture of a future development here where landscape is capable of dominating the view, a true image for a harbor front of Cleveland. In addition, there's many wonderful pockets that you have, these little Italy places, little neighborhood centers, and every city loves its little squares and little areas where shops would occur or cafes. Some might be more expensive than others, some might be a little louder than others, but we have a chance to introduce all these small little places. And we think that those, again, that Cleveland idea is what helps to shape all of this. So we wind up with real estate that we have a tremendous amount of what we call waterfront blocks, which is the most important piece in development on a waterfront is waterfront, not water view, waterfront. And we also have park front. So guess what? We don't have one dog site in this entire plan. You're either on the water or you're on the park. And that, at least, is a pretty good start for most development. When we add up all the square feet, we get to a number that if you use, if you're familiar with FAR, if you did 3 FAR, which is less than what you do here, you would wind up with probably 7 million square feet over time. That's a lot of development, but it isn't going to happen all at once. So in summary, here we have these 3 districts with the connections upland and the wintertime and the park system and the pockets and integrating with water around an urban grid that's also working in the winter. We have to phase it. This is just one scenario. There's many different options over time for figuring out this phasing plan. The key thing is to start, we think, over at the far right next to where you've already built the museums and the harbor and the stadium, where you have transit, where you have upland street connections on East 9th. And this is the plan for phase 1, and there's a model outside the door that you may have noticed when you walked in, which begins to show how to bring all these principles into play. This is not something that's going to happen immediately, but a good part of it can happen within the 3 to 5 years, certainly next to the harbor and next to where the Science Museum is. There are probably some doubters in the audience. That was me. There's some doubters that say, well, how do you get this done and all that? Well, you've been very accustomed to building large, complex, big-scale projects for many years. You've done this harbor and museums. You generally do these are 3-5 years at the most, whether it was the stadiums, the arena, the baseball. This is not something that's unusual for Cleveland. The amount of land area, the amount of development, the public-private participation is what I would say you do. You maybe haven't done it in the last 10 years or so, but this is what you do. So it's not like we're coming to some place that doesn't know how to do it. And we've been working with Baltimore's Inner Harbor for the last 25 years, expanding it from its original center, which you could say is like the North Coast Harbor, It's called Inner Harbor East. It's won all kinds of awards, but it's considered by Baltimore its biggest success. It's the making of a real neighborhood next to the Inner Harbor where all the museums and the retail is. And it all started with the ideas of bringing the city fabric to the water's edge, bringing cars, the real city, to the water's edge. And it is now completely built. It took about 20 years. And the point is that whole area that's taken so long and is such a success fits within the area we're saying is phase one. So here we are, and we think it involves the park, the streets, the pockets, streets that are warm. These are, the red are all the frontages that we believe are capable of being relatively warm in the winter. We also have the quilt of street patterns which allow people to go on small streets and keep getting around and work their way through, but they remain pedestrian-oriented and only auto-convenient. We have a park system with the promenade and the big park of the stadium that begins to show how much landscape can dominate in this first phase. So all the pieces of the vision, the promenade along the edge, in this case we've reduced it down to 70 feet. We don't need as much landscaping next to all the boats that are in the big harbor. This is that view again, which is so much about integrating the land use policy with transportation policy and now maritime policy. This is putting the stadium in the park, and we presented this recently. I think it was at the Gunn Foundation, and the gentleman there who's been around a long time knows a lot of stuff. He says, there used to be a park right next to the old stadium, and lo and behold, all we're doing is rediscovering the obvious. But the only thing is now we're going to do a park that has more topo and evergreens and things to make the wind work in our favor, and then the stadium can enjoy it in the wintertime. So this idea of the landscape, the stadium and the park is, again, a very important part of Cleveland's history. Then we have this one other idea about if we could connect all the museums and maybe some infill developments over time. This is not even in our study area, but we wanted to give a context for us. It would be nice if we had a continuous Cleveland arcade, since you do arcades, and connect them around the waterfront and make it a place that in the wintertime you could come here, park your car, whatever, get out of the bus, and you're inside and enjoying all this that you have built, plus the waterfront. And by the way, that first stage of that is under construction now from the Science Museum to the Mather. So again, another idea that you've already started. I just sometimes think all we're doing is collecting everything you all are doing and just putting it together in a way that's more understandable. So here's our places. We have the promenade on top. On the left is the landing. We're able to do a street that goes right to the water edge so we can get right to and from the vessels. And one of the reasons we're doing the landing, it's a big public space, goes right to where the stairs lead up to the stadium. It's the 50-yard line. The reason we're putting it there's a big interceptor sewer right under there. We can't build on it anyway, so we might as well make it into an asset. We have a square in the middle, one of your new pockets called Harbor Square, and Crystal Place is the beginning of maybe that Crystal Arcade, adding on to what's under construction today. We wanted to just talk about this Cleveland pocket a little bit. The square we've laid out is almost the same size as Chagrin Falls Square, just to give you a sense of scale. The only difference is on the upper right is we might be doing it with 4- and 5-story buildings, not just 2 stories. This is the other thing, just to give a sense of scale. This is your East 4th Street on this area of Phase 1, just to show you how big Phase 1 area is. We don't need to do it all at once. We can do it in increments too, and we will. So the places is what we're doing, not projects. Many different developers, many different architects, a real feeling of a normal urban fabric, not a project. And this is one of the first sketches we've done of this. Now, you're going to say, well, this is not Cleveland. Where's all the masonry and brick and everything else? Well, this is a protected place in the wintertime. It needs to feel cheerful and bright, just like what the Scandinavians do with cold, cold climates. They're into making bright, colorful, flashy almost, not Times Square flashy, but a little bit of sparkle. And it's a little bit overdone, I admit. Okay, so we have parcel sizes here. If we did your 3 FAR, we'd probably be up to about 900,000 square feet. It's not all going to get done in the first phase, but it's the first stage. And this is Phase 1. When we put it all together, we get the urban district that's year-round. It is lots of new maritime going on with the new transit marinas. We're starting a new park system, creating a pocket, adding to the North Coast Harbor is really important. We're not just doing something next to it. And we're repositioning the stadium in a park. So all of this is about making the next great place, and these model photos are showing how the stadium is now greatly enhanced, that the first phase is about enhancing what's already in place.